Welcome, Wargamers, to the unyielding mountains of Ghur, because today we are talking about the next chapter in the ongoing story of Warhammer Underworlds, Direchasm. Now, for those of you who are new to the AOS setting or Warhammer Underworlds in general, this is a self-contained game set in the Age of Sigmar universe that began long ago with Nagash, the Lord of Death, creating a hellish prison for a civilization that dared to oppose his will. Now, if you want to get fully caught up on the details of that story, I actually have two other lore videos in my Warhammer Underworlds playlist to watch. That is Shadespire and Beastgrave, respectively, both which I will have linked down below. But in brief, Nagash's prison broke. Fundamentally, that's what happened. And the point it opened up was in the beating heart of a mountain within Ghur, known as the Beastgrave. Remember, this is the realm of beasts. Even geological features like mountains and rivers have a form of primal sentience. They are predators and prey. But there's so much more going on than just a monstrous mountain. Beastgrave is a vast and hostile location. Its corridors are lined with amber that has begun to liquefy, revealing new passages, unleashing long frozen beasts, and more. And in fact, it's through this new season of Warhammer Underworlds that we take the next step in exploring and learning more about the Beastgrave Mountain. So at the core of it, what's new about Direchasm? If you watched my full video on Beastgrave, you have a sense of what this mountain is all about. Well, as time has gone on, the mountain creature that is Beastgrave has become hungry. Now, normally, there's a rhythm in Ghur. The beasts will awaken, they'll hunt, they'll eat, and then hibernate, and that's typically what this mountain does. But the curse of Shadespire opening up in its guts has kind of messed up this cycle for Beastgrave specifically. Because all of a sudden, the things that it eats, meaning people who wander inside of it, anything that gets stuck inside the amber, all that stuff, it's not being consumed. Like the curse of Nagash that he put on Shadespire was one of undeath, and a miserable one at that. People would die in horrific ways, only to be resurrected and to die again and again with no sense of time. But what happens if you unleash that magic, that power, into the stomach of what is essentially a monster? How does it digest food? It doesn't. And so this rapid hunger set into the Beastgrave. The whole mountain is quaking and shaking like there's trembles all throughout its halls with hunger and rage. And this shaking has a lot of consequences that we will touch on. The first is that a primal power has begun filling the mountain. Like, if you enter one of the corridors of Beastgrave, you start to feel the same intense hunger that Beastgrave feels. And not just a physical hunger, but that mantic sensation it causes for truly starving people. You become more violent, more intense, more dangerous. And the deeper into the mountain you go, the worse it gets. And so, of course, the natural follow-up there is, well, why would anyone go inside Beastgrave? And the short answer is, there's a lot of ways to end up there, honestly. You could have traveled from Shadespire into it. Again, the two places are now linked, like all the older warbands did. And remember, Shadespire is full of extremely important treasure and knowledge, so people would flock to that location and could very easily end up here. Beastgrave itself is also full of explorers and miners and other people who were unfortunate enough to come across it in its millennia of existence and just got locked in amber there. The mountain itself does move. It's slow, of course, it's a mountain, but it can run over villages or cities, rivers, and more. And on top of all of that, the mountain calls to people. It's a predator looking for prey. So you can have visions of treasure and gold and different magical scrolls and so on. Whatever entices you to come there, the mountain uses those things as bait to lure in its next meal. It's a living thing, and it's a very cunning one at that. Now, the base of this mountain is full of deep valleys and crevices and fissures meant to trap large beasts or even have entire towns kind of fall into it. But it's usually full of this hardened amber, and it's inaccessible as a result. But now that the hunger has set in, again ahead of its time, that amber has turned back into liquid and kind of drained away. It's looking to ensnare its next meal because it's so stinking hungry. This leaves one of the particularly massive fissures wide open for explorers to enter, simply known as the Direchasm. It's the imposing base of a living mountain. Like roots to a tree, it's also an active part of the entire organism. It calls people in, and so explorers are going inside of the Direchasm thinking, oh, this is a new entry point to the mountain that's opened up, only to be trapped inside. That primal fury that courses through all of the mountain is strongest here, luring in all kinds of monsters and just explorers and people who are extremely unlucky. And as this new section of the mountain is being explored, strange things are being discovered. Like one that's specifically mentioned here clearly is the idea of this race called the Silent Ones. At this point, very little is known about them, but I suspect they're going to make an appearance here very soon. They are insectoids, so they're kind of, somewhere between a simple primitive human race and obviously insects. But they seem to be rather simplistic in how they live, and they've grown in sort of a symbiotic relationship with Beastgrave. As the mountain goes through its natural feeding and sleeping cycles, so too do the Silent Ones. When the mountains awake, so are they. They build their homes, they forage, they create crude wall paintings and engravings, and then when the mountain goes dormant, they revert to like a larval form. Again, insects, can't emphasize that enough. And they crawl into the amber and let Beastgrave seal them into stasis. They're not consumed, but are in fact protected by the mountain. Now, what benefit they offer the mountain is a little bit unclear. Likely they go through and they clean it up, they kill anything in it that needs killing, that kind of stuff. But since the natural rhythm of the mountain has been disrupted, that hard amber that secured the Silent Ones is beginning to melt away. So at this point, they're only half formed. Again, they're not ready to be released from their larval state. It's not part of their cycle yet. And so they're just trying to stick to the shadows. And their role within the mountain is very much unknown at this point. Like anything about the race, honestly, because their civilization is so primitive that they don't have necessarily like writing that we can read. It's just cave paintings, some very simple homes that are clearly built by tools and that kind of stuff. So it's just an interesting little side bit of how different civilizations can grow and evolve. And again, the symbiosis with something this big is really cool. The fact that creatures have adapted so well to this environment means that when they're like at their peak, when they're finally able to like get out of whatever larval state they're in, they're probably going to be truly terrifying, right? I mean, once it's an adversary that's back to its fully evolved form, I imagine it's going to be super, like, crazy strong. And again, they're insects of some kind, but intelligent and civilization building. And so little is known about them because all we have are a few flash sightings and cave paintings, and everything's covered in amber. And so, with the Shadespire curse showing no signs of stopping, and the starvation of Beastgrave beginning in full effect, the setting of Underworlds is getting turned to 11. And I know I say that every time because the stakes just get higher and crazier, and they always do. Warriors who are not allowed to die, supercharged with primal fury, trapped in a near endless maze between two realms, with new and exotic threats being uncovered all the time. This is what it looks like when worlds collide, and makes for a fantastic background for Warhammer Underworlds. And don't forget, this is happening in Ghur, where the main Age of Sigmar 3rd edition story arc is focused as well. In fact, Beastgrave as a mountain shows up on a bunch of the maps that we saw in Broken Realms Kragnos, so we actually have a sense of where it is located now, which is really helpful and quite nice. And as I end all these videos, I want to talk about why is this cool, and the truth is, y'all, I'm a sucker for this stuff. Ghur is my favorite realm, I've said it for years. I love the idea of living mountains and the way that the geography is ever changing. Beastgrave should be like the highest beast on the food chain, but currently it's rotting from the inside out completely accidentally, right? It has nothing to do with Nagash, it's just the way things panned out. I love the fact that they've brought Warhammer Underworlds and the main flagship Age of Sigmar game into the same space. I like that, where there's just a lot of art, imagery, and feelings that you can get from various, warbands and factions, and put them in Ghur, and it just kind of feels better to know that like they're not still off in some weird cutout section of the lore, back in Shadespire where it's this place that was kind of hard to reach and that kind of stuff. But now, that they're brought into the main event, or at least the location of main events, there's a chance for lore elements to interact with the Beastgrave more and more. And so I'm excited to see those pop up in Black Library novels for sure. As for the silent ones, anytime there's this idea, like I'm a Cthulhu guy, ancient races that are shrouded in mystery, it just sounds so cool. Like I want to know everything about them. I don't know if they're going to be a full army or anything like that, but even if it was just a war band or something, man, I'd be all about that. And someone brought up the idea of like insectoid armies in AOS, and I was like, yes, we need Age of Sigmar Tyranids. Absolutely, 1000%. Shut up and take my money. I love it. But anyway, friends, thank you so much for watching and listening. I hope that you enjoyed this video and that you're hoping to see more Underworlds content, because it's a game that I can actually play fairly regularly around here. And so I'm excited to jump into it more and more with you. So thank you so much for watching and listening, and I'll catch you next time. Happy wargaming.